Hey guys, so the purpose of today's video is to go over the top 4 picks that we have for the Theopetra community project. And really the point of this project is to find somebody going through a particular phase in their life and maybe they need some form of guidance or assistance to get to the next phase. And I think something that's just really cool as a community is helping somebody get to that next point or get to that next phase. And I always figured that if we could even help one person, one homeless person more specifically, it would just be a really cool thing just overall as future marketing, as just a community experience, and it's just kind of a bucket list for me as well. But one thing that I've learned, especially talking to homeless individuals and spending more time throughout LA in areas that they're in, a lot of them are in situations where mentally they need a lot more than just money. They need deep help. And it's still a bucket list of mine to help somebody fully homeless. And a couple of these people that we'll talk about today actually are. But I think expanding the bucket to not just homelessness, but also lower income and people that are doing maybe even okay. And maybe they just need some sort of guidance in another way. So the top 4 picks that we have for this NFT project are, and I'll break down each one as like a little summary. So that way you can just watch this one video. You don't have to watch the entire interviews of each one. The first one, excuse the video of the first one. His name is Michael. I pulled out my phone and I just wanted to record the conversation. It was pretty interesting. He was one of the first people that I've talked to. And one thing that struck me about Michael, he's in his 60s. He lives here in California. One thing that struck me about Michael was that he was incredibly articulate. You could tell he's very, very well read. He's very experienced. He's very wise. He didn't appear to be using any substances or anything like that, just by the way he was communicating. And his story is that he lost his wife in October of 22. She took a COVID vaccine and ended up passing due to a heart condition. And he ended up going on the street ever since. And the biggest thing that I think I've realized about Michael is he has zero anxiety or depression. Even after those tough events, even after being on the street, which was really, really interesting, a really kind of fascinating insight. He's trying to get to Arizona with his son. And right now he's earning Social Security from the government, about $1,300 a month or so. And with this budget, he'll be able to afford something in Arizona. And I think with just a little bit of a nudge, he might be able to be more than fine, living in another state. And that's pretty much his goal for the next 100 days is get to Arizona, collect a couple more checks, get into an apartment, and kind of continue on with his life. So that was the first guy that we spoke to. Michael spoke to him at the back of this little cafe area. The second person that we have on here her name is LaShawn, and we met her in Skid Row. She was also a homeless individual. And she lost her job during COVID. And the really interesting thing of what actually happened to her was after she lost her job, she figured, well, I might as well go all in and go all in on singing. A guy tried to recruit her downtown and told her that he could get her studio time. While she was in her studio, now without a job or without any kind of any dependable income, her car ended up getting stolen or stripped. I couldn't quite understand her. It was one of those two. And she ended up losing her car completely. And now she ended up pretty much stranded in downtown LA. It's a pretty crazy story. And she's been down there ever since. It's been about 3 years or so. She just kind of keeps to herself, does her own thing. She was definitely an interesting character. I highly recommend watching that interview. We just shot it straight on the sidewalk with the camera. The third individual, his name is Dave, and Dave is currently sleeping in his car. He has a full-time job. And the interesting thing about Dave is we met him online actually. I'm testing a new product called T-Pods, and he ended up reaching out to that from that ad, and I told him, hey, we're also doing interviews if you're interested, and he said sure, and he met us in front of a Starbucks. You'll notice the video is a little choppier, the audio is. We ended up losing the audio mid interview, but he had a crazy story. I highly recommend listening to his story. But long story short, he ended up losing his job in about 2019. He moved in with his girlfriend. She ended up passing away, and he's just had ups and downs and a crazy story. He ended up saving enough money for a car, and now he works at his office. And most of his coworkers don't know that after he's done with his office, that he just goes to his car and sleeps in a Walmart parking lot. And what to me struck me the most interesting about this was that this guy has a full-time job. He's not making minimum wage, and it's just that hard to make it out in California. It's pretty damn crazy. So he actually might be one of the first customers at Teapots, and additionally, I think he's a fantastic candidate for what we're doing, just because it's very straightforward with Dave as well. He's just trying to get into an apartment. He already has a job. He's already on that trajectory. So it seems like helping him save some money and getting him into that next phase of his life would be fairly seamless in a way as well. So that's pretty much Dave's story in a 1 minute nutshell. The last one, his name is Corey, and he's actually a Theopetra member. He lives in Florida right now at a ADU, a mother-in-law suite, with his daughter. He's a veteran. He was in the Army, and he's served a couple of deployments there. Ended up losing his job around 2019 or so, and lived on veteran benefits, since then. He got a divorce from his wife, and he ended up taking full custody of his daughter. And his number one goal right now is to get into IT and transition into something that he could be with his daughter 24/7, but also work remotely and kind of be part of the digital kind of ecosystem in a way as well. And what's interesting about his story is that he has a home, but he's aiming to transition into IT. So I'm going to try to get him in touch with people that I know in that space, on Twitter and in real life as well, and see if I can just help with any sort of guidance or assistance there. The last two stories, they're not homeless per se. They're just at a particular phase of their life where they're like, hey, this is my next goal, next 100 days, and helping people hit their next goal is just a cool thing to do in my opinion. And his goal right now isn't to get into any housing per se, although that is a goal. Right now it's to lock down an IT job. So Corey's a little different from the other participants that we've spoken to. His does have a little to do with housing because that's his long-term goal, but his more medium-term goal is to get into IT. And he's also a Theon as well. So those were the top four that we went with. Two homeless individuals, one guy sleeping in his car aiming to transition upwards, and one person that's already in housing aiming to transition into a career path that he's proud of. So those are the main four, and what we'll do is we'll have it into a NFT format. They're not going to be anything fancy or anything like that, just the snapshots of the conversation as just a little bit of a symbol and a little bit of a thank you to the community. And this is just mainly to see what happens if we add somebody value, just from the community level, but also from the individual's level. And this is just another layer that we can add to Theopetra that I think just keeps adding depth. And as we continue adding depth and units to the network, I think over a long enough time horizon, things get a little more interesting. But that was pretty much it for the top four stories there. And I'm going to continue doing interviews with people, just seeing however we can add value. Those conversations are always good to have, and ideally reaching out to as many homeless people as we possibly can as well, just because we are a housing project. I think there's some important things that we can take away, but also I think just from a marketing perspective and also from a partnership and fundraising perspective, it might be pretty interesting. So those were kind of some quick 1-minute summaries on each person there, and I'm really excited to see where this series ends up going. So appreciate it, guys. See ya.